I don't know if you guys have heard this. This is the worst story I've had to report all year. Denia Young, 29 years old, out of Seattle, unalived her 14-year-old son last Thursday with an extension cord. She caused 1,172 injuries to her son's body. 72 of those injuries were directly to his face. And what makes this matter even worse is that her other three children were in the house when this occurred, along with his stepdaddy, who did absolutely nothing to stop his stepson from being unalived at the hands of his abusive mother.
I think this is a disturbing story because of how this young man passed. I heard the story and I thought to myself, this is sick. This is very, very sick. A young man beaten to death by a mother who obviously could not control herself at all.
This beating lasted for more than an hour, and his stepdaddy never intervened. How can you call yourself a man when you sit there and watch this woman lose control and watch this child lose his life? You are yet to be charged, but you both deserve to be in prison.
So he says they both deserve to be in prison. Of course, I'm curious to know what you think. Let's check out a few comments here. It says, she had nothing but hate for that poor child. I think so. Here's somebody else who says that was pure hatred, built up anger and resentment. For your son? You know, part of the delusion of growing up, and I did think for a while I was very delusional, growing up with a loving mother and parents, is you hear things, or you hear, and I'm not talking about stories like this. I'm talking about you hear young people say things like, I hate my mom. And they genuinely say that. And you think to yourself, oh, something's wrong with that child. And I used to think that when I was younger, without being open to the fact that maybe that kid went through some extreme trauma that they couldn't process. Like, what happens to the child who went through this and survived, and now they either don't trust within relationships, or there may be a resentment towards people who remind them of their mother, so on and so forth. Some more comments here. This says 29 years old, 14 years old. She was 14 having babies. Wow. Wow. Another conversation there, another angle. 14 having babies. Could there have been some correlation between her inability to properly develop because she was too young when she had the child, and maybe resents him because he maybe altered her life? There's a whole lot here, man. There's a whole lot. What do you guys think? Of course, it's a horrible story. Part of me was actually thinking to myself, maybe this actually may not be true. Because, you know, you see a lot of stories that will come up. I was like, is this a true story? And everybody's talking about it. It's over here on Kiro 7. It says, Seattle mom, 18 son to death with extension cord, caused over 1,100 injuries. This isn't discipline, right? This isn't discipline a child. This is just straight evil is what this is.
That woman who beat her son to death, her 14-year-old son to death, for not having completed his chores when she returned home after work. She beat him with an extension cord for over an hour, to the point where the boy fell, hit his head, was unresponsive, and she continued to beat on him for another 5 minutes before she really realized that he was unresponsive. She went to work. She had a bad day at work. She probably had a bad week, whatever, as she proceeded to come home and crash out on her son. And this is the shit that we talk about when we say that not all of you guys deserve to be parents.
Right.
Because you really do look at your children as this like punching bag. You guys look at them as this release for your frustration. There's no way in hell y'all could tell me that she was beating him only because of the fact that he did not complete his chores.
Right.
No, she was beating him because she probably had a bad day at work. She probably got into an argument with a lover, a family, a friend, whatever. She probably has a lot on her plate, whatever, but she doesn't know how to regulate her emotions. And so she came home and she beat her 14-year-old son to death. And now she's asking for sympathy. talking about that she wants time and she wants to be released so that she can grieve the loss of the son that she killed.
What? Sometimes like I hear things and I'm just wondering like this is real. Like I have to remind myself this is real.
That she killed. Like, y'all be doing too much, and then y'all want to laugh at other people when they say that they want to exercise gentle parenting. Now, I'm not saying that gentle parenting is the best. You understand? I think that everything needs to be shaped, towards the child that you're dealing with. Sometimes you need to hit them on their, you understand? And sometimes you got a kid where talking to them thoroughly is, just as effective. But
This is the problem with, I think, with these type of situations is that people will find because I've never reported on a situation like this, right? They'll find a situation like this, beat him with an extension cord to death, 1,100 injuries. And they'll say, this is why we need to gentle parent. You don't need to go to extremes. There is a place where you can find a close to enough balance where that child definitely can still benefit from good discipline and parenting. And so I don't think this should be an excuse, right? But this is what people do who just they lack nuance and they're trying to now use this for something else.
there's a reason why a lot of the new day, these new millennial or Gen Z parents don't want to use corporal punishment.
Stop it.
Because we realized that a lot of our parents was taking out their frustration and their anger with other adults or other factors that they could not control. And they were using us as a punching bag to relieve that stress and that frustration. And a lot of you guys have that mindset of it was done to me, and I'm okay, so I'm going to do it when I have my kid. No, a lot of y'all should not be parents. And honestly, I hope God deals with you. I do. I hope you repent, Miss Lady. But I do hope God deals with you.
What she's talking about?
I hope he does.
Oh, okay. I thought she was talking about people who discipline their kids. Listen, I'm somebody who got whooped, but when I look back at it, this would have never happened. And let me tell you something, because people are asking, well, why didn't the stepdad actually intervene? This is interesting. You guys might find this actually very interesting. There was a study that talked about the predictor. All right, so this is a video, and they had a segment here that talked about predictors for children getting hurt within a household. I can't say the actual word. And they talk about what increases the chances of that happening. This has to do with the question that was asked later of why didn't the stepdad intervene? This is what I thought about. Of course, I'm curious to know what you guys think. Check it out.
And in a second now, I'll unpack what that means. So there are certain patterns of crime.
This is Dyer, the CEO, and we have Godsod here, Dr. Godsod.
That happen in exactly the same way for the exact same reasons, irrespective of which culture it happens in and irrespective of time period. So it certainly can't be due to cultural factors. It can't be to era factors because it transcends all those things. So let me give you two examples from the book. And that was actually my eureka moment where I decided, I will now take this evolutionary framework and apply it to consumer psychology, to psychology of decision making, which eventually is the field that I founded. So two examples. Example one, and forgive me if I put you on the spot, it's worthwhile for that. What do you think is the number one predictor of there being child in a home?
So since my editor is going to actually mute that word, he says child hurt in a home. What's the number one predictor that a child would be hurt in a home, right?
An absent parent.
Okay, very, very reasonable answer. Yeah. And so usually in lecture one, when I'm teaching an evolution psychology course, I'll ask this question and I'll start putting all the students' answers. And they're all reasonable answers. If there is alcoholism in the home, if one of the parents had been abused in their past so that they they mimic that behavior onto their children then. All reasonable. Well, what if and by the way, no one guesses what the real answer is. So then I say, well, guess what, guys? You just listed 25 reasonable predictors. The number one predictor is 100-fold more predictive than anything that's on that board. I've lectured this a million times. I'm getting goosebumps telling it to you right now. So let me explain what 100-fold means. In science, when let's say I want to check the efficacy of a drug and I want to compare it to a placebo, a sugar pill. Well, if it has a 1.2 odds ratio, meaning it's 20% more effective. So it's 1 to 1.2. That would be a big effect. 1 to 1.2. What I'm saying is 1 to 100. So it is astronomically greater effect than anything we would typically publish in science. Well, the number one reason, Stephen, I've kept you in suspense long enough, is if there is a step parent in the family.
What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of that? The conversation of how powerful it is to have biological parents. Now, I know that's, when it comes to science, harsh truths, dark science, some people like to call it. These are hard things to take in. No, it does not mean that every step parent is negligent, but I think there's a lot to think about here.
So there's 100-fold increase in child if the home is not made up of two biological parents. This is why the fable of Cinderella is such a universal fable, because it speaks to an evolutionary principle.
Let's not skip over that 100-fold increase in children being neglected, right, within a home being hurt, if there are no biological parents.
Stepmother is only differentially nasty to her stepdaughter. She's actually very, very nice to her two biological daughters. So now you would say, well, what would be the evolutionary explanation for that? Well, we know in many, many species where you have very high parental investment, say, for example, in lion prides. Lions are the only feline group where they're a social group. Most other felines are solitary. The only thing that the male does is the copulatory act, and then he's off. Well, in lion pride, the males do invest heavily in their children. What ends up happening is there's 2 or 3 dominant males within a pride, and they kick out all the young males that are now coming up, so that there's all these frustrated young males in the savannah that are now looking to take over a pride. They will challenge the 2, 3 dominant males, and for a very long time, those older males will rebuff the attacks. But father time eventually catch up to you, and you're left with 2 choices as the dominant male. You either leave and you end up having a slow death out alone in the wilderness, or they will kill you. Now, when the new incoming lions come in, do you know what's the first thing they do? First on the agenda list, first thing they do is what?
They, I believe, kill the newborns.
They attack the kids.
Exactly. They kill off in a complete systematic infanticide genocide every single cub who by definition could not have been sired by them. Why? Because I'm going to spend a lot of energy and resources investing, because we are a biparental species as a lion pride. I don't want to be investing in another male's cubs. Therefore, now paradoxically, incredibly, after the females put up a big fight to try to stop those new incoming males, they end up losing the fight. First thing that happens after is the females go into estrus, meaning they become sexually receptive to the new males. So I joke with my students, in the human context, you put on Barry White music to get the ladies interested. You buy a beautiful gift, you pay attention. You want to get the ladies' attention in lion pride society, kill her children. So that's one example of how we've evolved the calculus in our brains to not feel as happy investing in other.
I think, following the story we just covered, that could be a very dark joke right there. So just, I didn't see that one coming.
Children in our own. Now, the next thing that ends up happening is some student will say, oh, but does that mean you are justifying through science child? And of course, the answer is no, right? An oncologist studies cancer. That doesn't mean he or she is for cancer. That doesn't mean they are pro-cancer. It means that if you want to understand cancer, you have to study it honestly. So if you want to tackle child, and you now know that step parenthood is the biggest predictor, that's a valuable tidbit to have. So that's example one. Example two, do you know, Stephen, who is by far the most dangerous individual that a woman will ever meet in her life? Whether it's the Yanomamo tribe in the Amazon, whether it's the Hadza tribe in Central Africa, whether it's in ancient Greece 2,000 years ago, or whether it's in Detroit, Michigan 2,000 years from now. Who is the most dangerous person by far that you will ever meet?
Let me think about this. Who's the most dangerous
Wow, I'm over here watching this. This is such an interesting conversation.
person she will ever meet?
By orders of magnitude more than anybody else. And the minute that I'll say it, you'll go, oh, no kidding. But the fact that you don't exactly demonstrates my point. And that's why evolution is so important.
I think the most dangerous person she will ever meet is
Her future husband or the future man, the man who will give her children?
another.
You're already off.
Okay, I don't know.
Her husband.
I was going to say.
There you go.
I was very.
Coffee man got it. All right, that's it. Interesting conversation. Definitely worth checking out. We went really, really, really out of topic with that one. Listen, guys, that's it. I appreciate you guys as always for checking out yet another episode of the Coffee Pod. To my soon-to-be married, and what a follow-up, right? Soon-to-be married and currently engaged men. Head over to fathershaverights.com. Make sure you get yourself the number one guide to drafting a solid and legally binding prenuptial agreement for free with offer code REVIEW. Appreciate you guys. Till next time, I'm out. Peace.